time to put down your rod and pick up your headphones. Join JC and Andy from Ebb Tide Tackle for The Outflow, the podcast talking all things lure fishing with hardcore fishers from all over the world.
Welcome back to The Outflow. Not a ton of fishing going on for Andy and I, but the downtime does provide the perfect opportunity to reach out to our old mate Christian Georgopoulos, Fish with Kish, the man behind many great cod captures and bait religion. Morning, Kish. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, boys.
How are we going?
Oh, not too bad. Just in lovely Shepparton.
It's the way. And you, Johnny, going well?
I'm going well, mate. Had to set my alarm for this little catch-up, but usually have a sleeping on a Sunday morning, you guys.
Get you up early.
Yeah. I'm on my second coffee, though.
Second, nice.
Third here. It's all good.
We had the one.
Oh, really? Nah, so you need a 4-year-old in your life when you're dragged out of bed at 6 a.m. On a Sunday. No fun.
No fun at all.
Nah. So, Kish, tell us a little bit about, I guess, your backstory. Where'd you grow up? You just mentioned Shepparton. Are you a Shep boy for life? And how'd you get into fishing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for just having me on the podcast, boys. I appreciate it. Yeah. So Shepparton for me is central Victoria. So probably not many people know where it is, but it's quite a large country town. Grew up predominantly fishing for Murray Cod. I never did a lot of saltwater as a kid. Obviously, living in central Vic, as nearest would probably be Melbourne, which would be about 2.5 hours from where we are to get to the closest ramp. So we spent a lot of time on the rivers, Murray River, Goulburn River predominantly. Started off bait fishing, which was really, really fun. Spent a lot of time, I'd say, with my old man would probably be the biggest influencer in my life for fishing. My grandfather was a big fisherman. I never met him because he passed away before I was born, but yeah, he was quite a big fisherman. So growing up, I always had that passion to fish, but I never really knew what fishing was all about as a kid, which I don't think any of us do, until you probably get to your teenage years and you start to realize that, you can either catch and release or you can, get a feed or whatever it might be. So for me, it was all about probably learning the basics from a young age, bait fishing and then from there progressing to lure fishing as I got older.
Kish, there's a fair bit of age between you and me, but there's a real similarity of growing up in that region, being a Shepparton boy myself, of that indoctrination into Murray cod fishing. But the indoctrination today might be a bit different, but back then it's bait. It's and undoubtedly a connection between old illegal fishing practices, no doubt.
Oh, for sure, man. I'll be straight up honest. When I was a kid, I was taught how to just put springers out. I was taught how to do all that. Did I disagree with it at the time? No, because I didn't know any better. But it taught me how to bait fish and the way I would look at catching big fish differently. Putting springers out and knowing where to put them was huge. And back then, I was learning off people that did that, like my other grandfather, who done it as a way of living. That's how they ate. So, exactly like you said, like Shepparton was big for bait fishing scene. And, we used to call it the cocktail, where you'd put yabbies, worms, barty grubs, you'd put it all on the hook and you'd sink this massive hook down, and before you know it, you had a big cod on the other end. So huge.
See, that just shows so much here, man. There's so many different ways to even do something like that, because the schools that I were in regards to set lines for cod there was one bait, and that was carp, like live carp, and it was within inches of the surface, and straight away there goes. There's no one way to do things, is there?
Nah, there's not. And it's interesting because every time, we sit around the campfire now, we talk about this, don't we? And we talk about how you guys did predominantly more big carp on the surface, and we predominantly sunk, a big yabby, a big barty grub, and a bunch of worms. And
down
shrimp.
Into the snag.
Yeah, down into the snag. And I have some of the best memories, man, where you'd pull up and you pull this, big springer up, and you're like, oh, it's, there's nothing on there. It's slack. And then all of a sudden, just bang, just this big thump. And you're pulling it up and this big head's coming towards you. And, back then you're hanging out, half hanging out of a tinny with no life jacket on, and you're pulling up this, big meatery fish.
In the current.
In the current on a springer. And we don't encourage that now, and I don't encourage anyone to do it. It really taught me a lot about Murray cod fishing. So,
oh, for sure, mate. It's I do think it's probably a bit of a missed learning if you just go straight into lure fishing or straight into swim baiting, which I can't imagine anyone doing that. But bait is a journey about becoming an angler, I reckon.
Yeah, we've always had this point, haven't we, where we always tell everybody that if you haven't even fished for cod before, you're crazy not to bait fish for them. You've got to bait fish for them. It teaches you so much about where fish actually live and sit, and where you would say cast a bait into an area, let it sink, and hopefully get a bite. And I growing up, like even now, if I went bait fishing and took someone that's never fished before, I could definitely pull up the snags and say, oh, you'll catch a lot of small fish here. So over years, it just teaches you, when you start lure casting, that these are the areas that you want to be hitting if you want to target good fish.
Teaches you so much, mate, and it teaches the variances of cod. In late arvo, early morning, or at night, you can catch cod on a sandbar that's 2 meters deep, tops, with worms on the bottom, or a little shrimp. Which it goes against everything, where people have this preconceived connotation. Oh, you've got to fish the deep hole, or you've got to fish the snag. Certain circumstances you definitely do, but when they're on the job, mate, they're wherever they want to be, wherever they think food will be, and food's not always what we think it is. These fish spend a lot of time grubbing along the bottom. Yeah,
exactly right. You got to appreciate the fact that river fish probably don't have the beautiful crystal clear water that we see in Blowering or we see in Lake Eildon. So at night they probably find themselves up against sandbanks because it's probably easier to scrummage for food. So, putting your nose in and working through the sand, because it's interesting. Like I spoke about this with Tommy and Dean from Lego Head Lures up in Griffith, where they've experienced it firsthand, where they've seen cod, dishing up sand on a sandbar, and they've seen it firsthand, and they've even seen yellers push up into the sandbars, and, they're doing a similar thing. So it's interesting because we just assume a sandbar is nothing, and like you said, it's where that's where the food resource might be for that given bend or that given flow. It's just everything's different.
Yeah, it's just the least attractive option when you look at, say, a river during the middle of the day. It doesn't look like that's what's going to hold fish, and I don't think it holds them, but they certainly go there at the right times when they're looking for a feed.
Bloody oath, totally agree with you there. Yeah, Smithers, have you had much to do with cod pushing up on banks and stuff like that in sandy points?
Oh, a little bit. Look, I haven't really done a lot of river fishing. I'd say 80% of my cod fishing's been more in lakes or dams. Yeah, look, it's definitely the way to approach it with an open mind. A lot of people don't tend to. They get fixated on, I've got to go and bang snags, especially you see a lot of guys throwing lures and spinnerbaits is just hit the wood, and that's all they do all day, where there's, as you said, there's so much more to it.
Well, I think a day fishing with Cish on the Murray is a great eye-opener. In terms of top water fishing, you can chuck over absolutely anything, and it's surprising where fish come from, even in that environment, in a top water situation.
Yeah, you see so much of it. The videos, guys get stuck on this. You've got to be hard. You've got to cast deep into the snag and everything and bring it out. And you watch guys fish in the river, and some of the videos that you've even put up, Cish, fishing with Johnny and stuff, is, it's not always that deep snag. It could be that outer limb, the outer twig where the fish is sitting, actively feeding, hunting. And so many people position their boat too close. They're sitting on top of the fish. Their cast is finished before it gets to them.
Yeah, 100%. And the biggest thing biggest advice that I could probably give to someone is when you're fishing somewhere like the Murray, because fishing the Murray would be completely different to fishing the Goulburn or the Bidgie or every river is unique in its own way. But if you want to talk about the Murray, I like to give an analogy that you're never too far, if that makes sense. Like you don't be scared, because some of these limbs, you truly don't understand how far they do come out.
Yeah.
And when they do come out that far, you'll be surprised how many would be sitting that far out. So yeah, when you feel like that's probably the biggest thing I do see, too many people way too close. And as much as it's murky water, if you still got a tinny pushing through timber, you're going to frighten them. So you've got to be in that position where you want your lure to be hit at the right time. So positioning your boat is definitely key.
Nice, man.
And I think it's probably good for people to realise that cod aren't scared of current. They're big, fat, lazy slobs, but they can handle a heap of current. And sitting out on those outer limbs, they're the fish that are actually, they want to feed. They're looking for feed. And it's a missed opportunity to have your boat basically positioned inside of those fish and fishing for root balls up near the bank. You're missing out on a whole bunch of fish that were there to feed.
Yeah, and you're spot on. Like, if you look at it in the sense of, if you're in a position where you're casting your lure and it's only in the strike zone for, say, 2 meters, and you're, say, fishing a hard body that's a root ball, the chances, even with the water clarity, the chances of a fish finding that is pretty poor. So the way I look at it is, if you're going to fish surface, why not have a 5 meter strike zone? So sitting that little bit further out increases your strike zone. Whereas if you're fishing a hard body in fast flowing current, you're probably only looking at a maximum of a 2 meter strike zone. So if we take it back and we say, all right, we've got fish sitting out in the limb, what's the best way to target it? That's what you need to work out in your river system, because I've got a few guys that have messaged me that fished the Bidgie, or they've fished the Goulburn, or whatever it might be. The flows, the water height, all that would dictate where you're going to position your boat 110%, and the run that you're fishing. Like, I've caught fish. I remember that time me and you fished, John, where we fished that run where I got that hit on the YouTube. That you know yourself, that was completely different timber. That was more vertical, twiggy stuff compared to more longitudinal stuff coming out of the bank. So the way we positioned the boat, we're quite close. And we got that hit quite close. So and that fish, remember that day, that fish was sitting quite high, like up against the bank.
Yeah, for sure it was. And I think that's a really good example of, that was an unattractive piece of water.
Oh, tell me about it. It was pretty bad, wasn't it?
Yeah, you don't look at that and go, oh my God, I've got to fish this. This looks so good. It's like, honestly, you could just drive past that stretch. Just drive past it. It's nothing special about it. It's not a lot of timber, a little bit, and it's spindly. I think there was a bit of bankside reeds. Nothing special about it. But I think Ray Clifford made a good point about that, didn't he, Andy? That those stretches, they hold fish and people don't fish them. So all of a sudden you've now got unpressured fish. Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah, that was a big thing he looks for, and not necessarily cover distance to get to the prime spots, but work the area and know your piece of water. So valuable.
One of my golden rules that I don't tell a lot of people, but I'll say it on here for you boys.
Tell the podcast listeners though.
Tell the world.
Tell the world. The biggest one for me is boat ramp snags. They are the most untouched snags you'll ever fish. Yeah. I've caught a lot of some really good fish right near boat ramps. And the reason being is because every angler's got the same thought, is that, this is a boat ramp, no fish is going to sit here, or it's been peppered already. And 9 times out of 10, it hasn't. So, Ray's got the same view on that. When I listened to the podcast, he mentioned the same thing, where, you drop in and then you just start fishing. And the reason being is because so many people drop in and the first thing they do is scoot up or downstream. They don't necessarily fish that snag. So that's a big one. If you're sort of ever counting yourself and you're dropping your boat in and it's, gray zone and it's the sun's just about to come up, or, you're starting to get that sunrise, don't ever ignore right next to the boat ramp. It can be deadly,
for sure. Well, you look at Bundalong boat ramp, the good fish that get caught within a couple of 100 meters either side of that
100%.
boat ramp with all the ski boats coming in and out.
No, that's
crazy.
it. Well, you look at my whaler, pretty much any ramp that goes onto my whaler, there's good water right next to it.
Yeah. And this is where, like especially in the Murray, it's one of those things where I see it all the time, where you'll be fishing and you hear these boats just come past, and you've just gone past so many good snags. Unless you know something I don't know, you're going somewhere where there might be a fish waiting for you, but you got to hit the good stuff. So
there's always that temptation of just around the bend. Surely it's better.
Yeah, 100%. But just to touch back on the positioning your boat stuff, well, I like to sort of position it obviously facing upstream, so into the current. So you don't want to be positioning yourself going downstream, because obviously you're going to move too quick. You want to position yourself up against the water and heading upstream, but you're not heading upstream. You just got enough, like John, you've experienced it with me, where you've just got enough on the motor that it's keeping you in touch with the current, but it's also pushing you downstream, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to me, it's controlling your movement downstream.
Spot on. Yeah, exactly right. And the minute you can get that right, and don't get me wrong, and this is why people say to me, "Oh, what's the pristine achievement in Murray cod fishing?" And people say, "Oh, the biggest cod, 100 pound, 140 centimeters." That's all cool, but I think if you can bang good fish in some of the hardest environments, I think you can just take your hat off and give yourself a pat in the back. Because if you're fishing the Murray, that at best case scenario, you're getting, 2 weeks worth of water running at 4,000 to 5,000 meg, the rest is up at about 8,000 to 9,000 plus. So you're fishing like a power horse stream that is just pumping water. If you can control a boat in that flow and catch good fish, you're doing pretty good. That's the way I look at that.
There's a lot of rivercraft that comes into catching that fish. And I see this with cod fishing. Cod fishing's popularity has boomed in the last however many years, certainly less than 10 years, maybe five plus, just an absolute boom. There's more people doing it probably than ever. And there is a lot of lures going past fish. Call it pressure if you like. The achievement for me as an angler, when I can fool a good fish, it doesn't have to be, the biggest in the world, but you fool a good fish. There's a really strong sense of achievement that on your day you were on the game and able to make a good fish make a mistake. And that's part of this whole game. Not like we all like the thought of going to that place somewhere where it's, virgin, untouched water. There isn't much of that anymore. Nowhere's untouched, but there's probably some private property, gorge country type fishing up in New South Wales or southern Queensland. That's pretty good, but that's not accessible for 99% of the population. So we're sharing the same waterways, we're sharing the same fish. If you can do things right to get that bite, that's Murray cod fishing.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it's panning out to come, isn't it? It's going down that pathway. And you know what? Like, that's no different to the bass world in the States. They've got so many fisheries there that, you've got all your small ponds in the center of towns and stuff. But if you look at some of the real big Bassmaster lakes and stuff like that, look, they've all copped ridiculous amounts of pressure. But it's anglers having to adapt to that, which is what is going to have to be in the Murray cod world. We're just going to have to adapt on the day to what, you want to achieve. And going back to what you said, like, if you can fool a Murray cod that's a trophy fish, I think we don't really appreciate that too much. Like, we should really acknowledge that a little bit more, because it's bloody hard. It's not easy.
Well, the guys that are using, Panoptics and other forward-looking live scope imaging are proving how many fish see our lures and don't react the way we want them to react. So it's going to pan out more and more that the guy behind the swim bait rod or the particular bait he's got tied on matters.
Yeah, 100%.
How he uses it, and it being perhaps unique or just right. Like it's not as though like a popular bait will, in my opinion, become ineffective, but it may over time be a little bit less effective because it's been seen a lot. That's definitely a chance.
Yeah, I think one other thing as well, when people get on about that topic about, that lure was good last season and they've seen it too much and everything else. I don't necessarily think it's that. I think a lot of the time as well, that lure becomes popular and the guys that originally made it popular were throwing it at the time that was right and appropriate for that lure. But all of a sudden, every man and his dog is throwing that lure 24/7. So, the net time that lure is now in the water is, catapulted through the roof, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to catch more because that lure might have an appropriate time and place when it's needed, when it's at its best.
Yeah, for sure. That's very true. I think Cish Copton, it really, 5 or 6 years ago had a huge name as the top water lake. And that seems to have changed now. Is that BS? Can you not catch fish with regularity on top water there now? Or is it simply a case that too many paddlers, too many wake baits went overfish and they got caught on them and they've learnt their lesson?
I think it's multiple theories, but the way I look at this too is we seem to forget Mother Nature. We seem to forget that 5 years or a couple of years ago when, 2017, 2016, the Murray River fished really, really, really good for topwater. But since then, it's sort of slowly degrading and becoming not harder, but we're seeing less and less really good fish being caught out of the Murray on topwater. So when we can look at that as Copton, maybe it is a Mother Nature thing where they've had some really bad droughts and, we're probably just seeing that water level in that lake or that water temperature or the clarity, whatever it might be, that the fish are probably just acting a little bit more secure and probably not taking their chances on using so much energy to eat a topwater bait. There's that one theory. Then there's another theory of, like you said, they've probably seen a lot of lures. So now they're probably smartening up. That's always a possibility too. And you got to remember, Copton's quite a small dam. Like if we compare it to like Lake Eildon, or it's when you think about how much cod are actually in Copton, them fish could easily see a lot of lures quickly.
I think so. It's not big. It's not a big dam at all.
Nah,
Copton. Like you're at one end to the other in 20
exactly
minutes.
Right. Yeah. So going back to your theory, I reckon there is a possibility that they have wisened up for sure. I don't think you would say it's the sole answer, but I definitely think it plays a part. We've all probably witnessed the fact that. Oh, and it's hard to say this too, John, because how many times have we seen a fish caught twice on a similar type of lure? So yeah, I definitely think some of them have wised up. That's for sure. Because it did get peppered. Let's be honest, like it got peppered.
I think it still is, man. I think it's a high pressure lake, really, but it's just a lake with really good numbers of good sized fish. Like your average return from a Copton fish is. It's going to be probably in the 90s at a minimum and up from there. So that it's an attractive place. It's just got a bit tricky for a couple of years with it being so low and just dropping hard, but it will bounce back to be its former glory, I'm sure.
But how amazing was it? Like we all lived that era where Copton was the place to be, and
I think we're on the back end of it too.
Yeah, and it was just awesome, waddle. We've all got our marks in that lake that we would go to right now if we could, if it was, back at that water height.
The interesting thing I've found with thinking about Copton, I was actually thinking about this last night for some reason, but I've been there 6 times. Every time I've gone there, it's like a new lake.
Yep.
By virtue of changing water level. It's like the lessons that I've learned here in the past nearly don't apply now.
Yeah.
I really think you can apply that to any dam though. Like you look at Eildon, Eildon changes 0.1%, and it's a different lake. It's totally different. And 100%. I think that's a really good point for what's regarded as a quality angler or a gun angler on lakes and impoundments is it's very localized, and those guys know that waterway at a variable amount of heights.
Yeah, and we spoke about this before. I think that's what constitutes a really good angler is certain levels and certain dams opens new opportunities on new banks. So don't just assume that, that bank's always going to hold fish. At 30%, that bank might fish really well. But at 45% or even 35%, the bank across or the bank on the other side might fish better. So I think you've got to understand your lake and your waterway in that context, don't you?
And that can only come from actually years of fishing that waterway. It can't be an experience that you get in a short amount of time. I can think of banks right now at the top of my head that I've fished before, and maybe I caught fish on them, maybe I didn't, but seeing them out of the water now, and perhaps water's actually starting to push back up on those. You understand a bit more of its potential, that if it gets bait on it, this will be a fantastic bank for a period of time. And that's what it is, a period of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Spot on. And I think this comes back down to your electronics. If you're able to map certain banks out and mark them and probably note that, this is what it was good at 45%, when that dam drops or raises up to 45%, bang, run straight there, hit that bank. You're being effective straight away, aren't you?
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing about how to document and record that stuff, like photos of banks or flying drones around, or I don't know. It's a hard thing. I will admit that I probably leave it to memory, which is dangerous.
That's exactly like me. And then you scratch your head after a while. You're like, shit, I thought that was actually better.
But there is no substitute for having seen a body of water empty to then later when it's got water over it. It's like all the imagination of what might be under there is gone. Understanding where your river courses are so vital to then finding good flats, good banks. It's just it's certainly, reading a lake is so important. It's a crucial aspect of fishing big impoundments.
Yeah, and that's like, and the same applies to the river. Like I've fished extreme long amounts of the river locally, and I could take you to certain areas that just look really, really good, and then I would skip like another 100 meters to show you another really good stretch. So you apply the same sense to a river. It's more, you just know your stretches, get your stretches noted down. And then when you've got your stretches noted down, you're not wasting time thinking, is there confidence here? Is there not? Am I going to still stay here, or am I going to move? You build your confidence off knowing your stretches. No different to an impoundment. You find your banks and your levels like we spoke about, and you persist with it.
Yeah, exactly right. And one thing as well, you can sit down and do all the homework in the world, on the computer. There's interactive mapping tools, there's overlay tools, there's social mapping, shared mapping, all that kind of stuff. It's all a great basis, but there's nothing better than actually going and knowing that water by being on it and fishing it.
Yeah, 110%. And I think there's been way too many times where this has happened to me, but if you're not doing this, like as in, if you're not hitting the water, hitting banks at first light, and then when the sun comes up, you're like, I thought this was different to how I thought it was going to look.
I
hate the worst feeling, right? Yeah. And you're like, you're kicking yourself, just wasted so much time. And then, you reflect on that, and you start to become a little bit more smarter in the sense of doing your homework. If you're someone that doesn't do your homework, I think you'll find more wasted time and wasted sessions.
I guess at all of that, the main excuse there is we all need to go fishing more.
We need to go fishing more, and I think we need to appreciate the fact that donutting is not necessarily a bad thing. Like I've started to build, and it's interesting because like you see on Facebook now, and you see on social media, there's a lot of mental capacity coaching programs and mental toughness coaches, and we see all this stuff now, and it's like, I wonder how that could play in the world of, like, say, swim baiting, like angling. Like if you can build a really strong mental toughness to say, I've lost a boat, I've lost a fish boat side. How quick can you recover from that and not worry about it and take it as a positive? Like I'm starting to think like that now. It's as hard as it is to swallow. I feel like if you can build a mental toughness, resilience around that, I reckon you become a better angler. You know?
That's a really funny point, man, because I lost a really good fish this winter. It destroyed me for a week. I was sucking my thumb for a week.
Yeah.
It took me 2 weeks to kind of get over it, and it was the next time I caught a fish. It wasn't, no one knows how big fish are until they're in the net. But the first one, I'm calling for the one I was after. I caught a 90 odd, which made me feel a bit better a couple of weeks later. But it still haunts me. It's a long time. But I think you can use those losses different ways. One, you can use it to drive you, to burn you to go again and go harder and learn from that. And you can also let it make you crumble.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you say that, and you look at. I've even had it first case scenario too, where it eats at you for weeks, and then all of a sudden you catch that next fish and you forget about it. You know, like as in not all the time, but you forget it, and it soothes the pain just that little bit. Doesn't it?
It eases the pain.
Yeah,
that's it. But also, as you touched on to start with, Kish, you've lost that fish or haven't got it into the net. There's so many wins along the way. You know, you got the bite, you fooled the fish, you did everything you needed to do, except you didn't convert that last 1%. So people consider that, well, it's a loss. But there's a lot of wins along the way to get there.
The biggest win I look there at that scenario, right? This is how I look at this is, okay, if you're a weekend warrior where you probably fish for cod, hypothetically 52 weeks a year, say you probably do like 5 to 10 sessions, right? Which really is not much at all. Now, if you lost a really good fish in that scenario, I'd say, you probably got every right to, sulk and be pissed off and whatever else. And the flip side is, if you're someone who's actually quite, serious about your angling and you lose a fish like that, the way I'd look at it is go, all right, you put all these hours into then miss that opportunity and drop it. But reality is you fish enough already. So the chances of you coming across that situation again is more higher than the guy that only does 5 to 10 sessions a year. So take the positive from that, and sort of sit back from it and go, you know what? Like Andy just said, how did I get that bite? Bang, 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 done that. Good. All right, let me just replicate that and, work on it and become better. It's no different to, again, mental capacity in the world of sport. When a team makes it to a grand final and loses, it's, you've got a chance to come back next year. You just got to persist and be really strong at it. So
there's that old saying, you got to lose one to win one.
Well, that's true, isn't it, Johnny? And I've started to learn now that every fish you lose is probably, I look at it as a positive now. As I that angler.
I sit firmly in the camp of I'd sooner have had the experience to get that bite or get that hook up than not.
Yeah, 100%. And that's fishing, like if that's angling, let's talk about swim baiting. That's swim baiting in a nutshell.
Yeah, spot on. Exactly. I was about to say that's swim baiting, and half the attraction to it to a guy is you learn so much and you focus so much on each lure and what they do and how they swim and everything about it. It just sums it all up, doesn't it?
Well, that's like I'm a massive fan of Chris Zaldane in the Bassmaster Elite. I love the way he goes about it because, he has this theory where you'll rock up to a lake where blokes are like, oh, they're only eating jigs. They're not touching big baits. Just you got to pitch jigs, and he'll turn around and go, no, still tying an 8-inch mag draft, and he might persist for 3 days and not get a bite, but that fourth day comes and it's just bang, you've got a trophy fish. When we speak about this all the time. Trophy hunting is in its own league. You can't compare it with anything else. It's a league up the top where there's there's not many anglers that can sit in that league and do it persistently because it's such a mentally draining process.
Yeah, man, that mental aspect of trophy hunting is you already got a fish that does your head in anyway. Cod on lures aren't easy, and you're now excluding 85% of the fish in the system by running, a big bait. And in that desire to weed out those smaller fish to get to the one that you want, you're entering into the agreement already with the odds stacked against your favour, and you're doing that intentionally.
Yeah,
but that's trophy hunting.
That last word you just said, intentionally, that is huge. Like you were going into battle, and you're only saying I only want that 5% of fish out of 100.
Yeah,
you're really limiting your chances. So my advice is when guys do pick up, like I've got a good mate of mine that's just starting out now in the swim baiting game in Shep, and like he's already had 2 encounters but hasn't converted either fish, and he's a hunter, so for him, like he appreciates it now how hard it is for Murray Cod because you can't see. Whereas he goes, when you're hunting, at least you can see that trophy that you're looking at. Whereas people say, oh, you got sounders, but reality is sounders, unless you've got the optic stuff that we spoke about before, you're really, that fish could be moving quicker than what you think on your down scan or your side scan. So you might see him in that vicinity, but you're actually not seeing him physically in your presence, Yeah, so correct. It's hard, and that's why I feel like if you're trophy hunting, like we're just talking about now, you've got to have the mental toughness. And if you don't bag the sport out, and don't bag the lure, don't bag the rod, don't bag the reel, don't bag the tackle shot, bag take the knowledge on yourself to say, you know what, I need to become more mentally stronger to achieve this goal.
Or on the flip side, when it gets you, it gets on top of you mentally, tie on a 5/8 ounce black spinnerbait and just go catch a couple of fish.
That's exactly right.
Just go get a couple and feel good about yourself again before, and decide whether you're ready to enter into the challenging arena again, because it's
tournament fishing in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You're there to get the numbers. You're not there to get the trophy stuff. You look at Carl Jockerson. When John, you done that presentation with him, he talks about how I'll pull out an 8-inch glide bait on the last hour of the tournament when I've got my bag, or I need to risk it all. I need X amount of pounds to make this next cut. I'm going to pull out something out of my ass.
You see that happen all the time, hey, where he might be placed knocking on the door of the cut, but he needs kickers. So he'll fish like that. But if the fish don't come, then you actually place quite poorly. Yeah. But if it comes together, it's like bang, you're on the podium.
Okay, so let's take that scenario what you just spoke about, right? Let's go. Okay, he's risked it and it doesn't pay off, and all of a sudden he looks like he's had an average day. Hang on a minute. He risked it. He risked so much to put himself in a chance of being probably in the top 2, top 3 if it paid off. So really, he's just risked a hell of a lot in a tournament to take the big biscuit, and it didn't pay off. So what I take from that is any bloke doing swim baiting in the Murray Cod game need to appreciate the fact that just because you pick up a 10-inch mag draft off the shelf or a Gigantor or whatever it might be, you're not necessarily guaranteed to fish. You've got to work for it. Just because you got the right swim bait doesn't mean nothing. You still got to put them hours in. So
there's a bunch of other factors than the lure that you're tying on.
100%, mate. 100%. And, then comes a conversation of, you don't need to throw the $80 swim baits. You can throw the $10 ones. You probably could. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's your personal preference. But at the end of the day, what's there to say that, that $80 swim bait is what converted a meter 20? Are you going to really complain about the $80 anymore?
I look at it this way in terms of it could be any style of fishing, whether it's a $10 bait or a $100 bait or a $300 bait. If that is the one that gives you the confidence, you're mad not to fish it.
Yeah,
exactly
100%.
Right. Yeah. Spot on, man. And this is where I sort of look at it and go, we are so far behind as a game in Australia. And not personally, it's because, like you said, it's probably only grown in the last 5 years. It's new. But when you look at in America, man, there's guys there that are throwing negotiators from Roman Made. They're throwing mothers from Roman Made. They're throwing, DRT ghosts that are like $650 baits. They're throwing them on bass. What's not, and we're sort of sitting here umming and ahhing about $50 baits. Not to say that we shouldn't be, concerned about price, but they're just way in front. That's why they're converting them trophy fish. Not to say that you need expensive baits, but I'm just saying that they are throwing all sorts of stuff over there. They're not throwing a hard body.
Everyone's got their, I guess, price threshold comfort point
Spot on.
based on your income, based on your physical financial resources. But you can't put a price on confidence. And if you look at the money that you are spending to go fishing in the first place, the investment in your boat, the investment in your car, probably more important, the investment in your recreation time. Like, we've all got not infinite amounts of time to go fishing. I can't stand the thought of being on the lake or on the ocean, wherever I'm fishing a potentially inferior bait because of the fear I might lose it.
Yeah,
I'd probably sooner stay home. It doesn't have to be a $300 bait. It could be a $50, whatever it is that makes you comfortable.
I think
it's precious
right,
that time.
You're John, because I'll be honest, we've all been in that position. I think when we all started out angling, we all had that hesitation, like GT fishing, like, you pick up an Amagari popper and you're like, oh, this is expensive. But then you look down the track and you're like, I just seen a different style popper go for $500, and you're most likely going to probably lose that to some big fish out there. You just don't know. It could be a Spanish mackerel that comes up and cuts you off your line. That's even worse. Like
that's just theft.
That's just theft. Yeah, exactly right. So what I'm trying to say is, like, there's just, we've all had that fear, but until you come over that fear and just say, you know what, this is what I do. This is what I love to do. I'm not, I'm prepared to risk it all to maybe convert something. And that expensive bait for you might be $20, might be $500, might be $10, who knows? But it's irrelevant of the value. You've got to get over the confidence to say, you know what, if I'm going to go out there and risk it, and then, I've really got confidence in $200 bait, tie it on, fish it. That's what you're there for.
Yeah.
Well, and as well, when you're confident in that bait, you fish it better.
Exactly right.
You fish it how it's made to be. You know what's going to get eaten because you're in it. You're in tune with what the lure does.
Yep.
We've all done this where you've tied on a new bait, or you've dragged something out of your box that you're like, I need to give that more time. And you'll do the boat side swim, and okay, and you'll get how many times have you gone 10, 20, 50 casts and you cut it off because you're like, I just don't like what this thing does.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I reckon you're doing the right thing by removing it. If it just doesn't do it for you, you're not confident with it and you won't fish it properly.
Yeah, that's it. And it might not be, there's nothing wrong with the lure, but at that time and place, it's not getting the action or the result that you need, or you might not be swimming it properly, or, the application could be totally wrong.
You might have it hooked wrong, whatever it is. You might be using it on too heavy or too light a gear. Best way to kill a swim bait is to use it on the wrong rod reel line.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as a community of Murray Cod fishing, we're starting to learn that now. Like, big shout out to the Swim Bait Slingers group on Facebook with Daryl and Lewis who made that group. If you're not in that group yet, you gotta jump on it, because you can learn so much about swim baiting, Australian swim baiting for Murray Cod, as well as podcasts like these. So if you're not learning and understanding gear ratios, lines, rods, it's a whole different form of fishing, isn't it? Like, you got to start from the bottom. You got to get your notebook out. You got to start learning, because if you're not applying the right reel, rod ratios, all that type of stuff, you can't expect to have confidence in your bait, can you?
Aussies are on a big learning curve right now, and groups like the Swim Bait Slingers is awesome. And what I love about it is no one's doing a hard plug. It's a community, and it doesn't matter what brand it is.
Yeah,
exactly right, man. And I think everybody needs to appreciate that word, community. We're all there to help one another. So whether it be that platform or a podcast platform, we're all there to provide information to one another, to learn more and, become better at helping one another. Not to say that, hey, Andy's caught a good fish, you don't go and take his spot, but you'd appreciate the fact that he's providing information to the rest of the community to learn from. I think that's huge.
Yeah, it is for sure.
Yeah.
And the good thing about that group, it's not just a Murray Cod centric swim baiting group. It's about swim baiting, whatever Jews, flatties, you name it.
Yeah. And great little group, which is good.
Notice, Kish, a lot of the stuff you're talking about, the drivers and the motivation and the influence behind everything, it kind of shows through in Bait Religion, which is, your brand you've kicked off. Is that kind of in a nutshell, I guess, the main driver behind it, or the message?
Spot on. Bait Religion for me, I founded that, it'd be about a year and a half ago, I reckon now, when I say founded it, come up with the concept. And when that concept come to my mind, it just made sense because, like John said before, when you throw a bait and you're not confident in it, what's the first thing you do? You cut it off. So the minute you cut it off and throw it back down on the deck or whatever it might be, the first thing you do is go confidence. And like we've done it all the time in the boat where you go, oh, you're changing lures. And you're like, yeah, I am. You're not changing lures because you feel like changing lures. You're changing lures because the confidence is not there. It's clear. You're putting something on that's giving you more belief in that bait. And then when I sat there and thought about that concept, that's swim baiting. That's fishing in general. It could even be bait fishing. Like if you're bait fishing for cod, there's some guys that go, oh, I swear by chicken, or I swear by cheese. So it's confidence. It's faith in what you're fishing, whether it be even saltwater. I know you guys with the bluefin tuna have confidence in certain stick baits, and you believe that these ones work great. And not to say that these ones don't, but you just always know if it's a hard day, I'm going to fish this particular bait because I know it just gets that bite. So, to me, with Bait Religion, exactly where you're saying, Andy, that's where it all sort of came together for me was the concept of having faith in that bait and having confidence in that bait to then, give you the results, which, for now it's turned into a bit of a clothing label, which I'm pretty rapt about, but it's hard for me at the moment in a sense of trying to grow it rapidly, because I don't really have the resources all the time just yet. Still, running a full-time business on the side as well. So it's growing slowly, but it's getting there, which is good.
Mate, there's no rush to grow a business like in rapid time. I think the organic growth of a business is really the sustainable way.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're going to go with it, mate. I love your threads. They're a good style, a good mixture of like graffiti and street style. Whoever the artist you've got behind it is doing, sick work. Your concepts are good. And it's not a species dependent thing. It doesn't have to be swim baiting, doesn't have to be stick baiting. It's about whatever your style is. And I love that.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, the big motivator for me was our low cab trip to New Zealand with Jake. And the New Zealand boys, they were, and Nate from Hawaii, they were awesome. I think Jake gave me a lot of motivation. I had it in the background, as you knew, or both of you knew. I had Bait Religion in the background, and I just needed that motivation to push it and make it something. And then when we went to New Zealand, I was like, you know what? I'm like, there's no reason why I shouldn't give it a crack. So when I did, and I thought, you know what, just let it, like you said, organic growth, and just let it take off. And starting to think outside the box with designs and threads. I really wanted to do something that you can go fishing, but then on your way home, you could stop at a cafe or go and grab a coffee or whatever. And what you're wearing actually looks pretty cool. It's not to say, no disrespect to any other brand or designs out there. I'm just thinking in my brand concept was that it's something that you could just even wear anywhere at any time, and it wouldn't stand out to a point like a fishing shirt. So it was just streetwear on and off the water. It
is streetwear, and that's very much the style of low cab from New Zealand. And they're really average good guys, but they put out some really dope designs, don't they?
Yeah, big shout out to Jake, because he's been massive motivator for me, and he's a really good guy.
I'm sure he'll love that, man. We'll be getting him back on the outflow soon. We need to have a chat about kingfish stick baiting, and I want to drill down with him.
Yeah, he's very knowledgeable.
Do you boys know the difference between fishing wear and streetwear?
An anchor?
Yes, an anchor. That's right. You need an anchor in your design, and then all you do is fishing clothing. Yeah, I'm gonna get killed for that.
It's interesting because when I come up with the concept, I was like, I don't even know, like the design. The guy who designed it for me, he's from America. So when I say he designed it for me, I went to him with the whole idea, rough sketch and blah, blah, blah. but I just said, I need this to look good. And, you know, when he took my idea and we formulated it together, he stood back at it and goes, you know what, I'm actually really digging this. And when you look at it, you're like, yeah, I'm starting to dig that too. And then the amount of love that we got from America was really cool, because a lot of bass guys there just knew straight away that, oh, that makes sense. And when you've got a brand that can be understood worldwide, it's sort of, you stand back and go, oh, wow, look, that actually, my idea that I thought of actually paid off. You know, it's like, Andy, I think you had an instance where you walked into the servo.
Yeah.
The guy behind the counter.
Yeah, the local servo here. Yeah, the guy behind the counter, and he's like, oh, you know, he didn't know it. He doesn't fish or anything, but the whole thing just clicked for him straight up.
Yeah.
Like, he knew what it was and knew what it was about. And you're like, yeah, that's marketing 101. Like, that's branding's perfect.
So along the line, we've just come up with a few concepts now of, like you've probably seen on the Instagram or the Facebook page, the 7 Gods design. So that design was a pretty cool one where at the time Game of Thrones was huge, where I come up with this design where everyone was talking about, the 7 gods. If you Google the 7 gods, is, you know, all this theory of, you know, 7 gods of the world and stuff. So I thought, well, in the world of fishing, there's 7 gods. You know, there's crankbaits, there's frog baits, there's top water, there's jigs, you know, all this type of stuff. So that's how I come up with that design, which is pretty cool, which will eventually turn into a t-shirt and stuff soon. So slowly.
There's some detail in that logo.
Oh, tell me about it. It's the guy who done that for me. I've actually used him a bit now. He's out of Japan, and he's a really good dude to deal with. And his work is just incredible. Really, really skillful artist, which is good. So I think it's interesting because you talk about organic growth, John, where you design something on paper. Like, you know, I'd never come up with that depth of detail like you just said on that design, but I came up with the foundation. And then, you know, when you work with someone who's a skillful artist, anything can develop. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool seeing your little idea grow to something even better than you imagine. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it is, man. Yep, it is. And for me, it's like I say to you all the time when we're fishing, you know, for me, it's not a hobby. It's more just something to benefit the community of swim baiting and fishing and whatever you want to call it, bait fishing. It just benefits anyone that has a rod and a reel, the way I look at it.
Yeah, cool. Well, best of luck with it, man. We're right behind you and hope that goes well.
Awesome, man. I appreciate the support. You guys have been awesome. I appreciate everyone that done the pre-orders too. I must say I will send out an email, but I know a lot of manufacturing companies at the moment have been pretty on the back foot of what's going on. So we'll definitely get them out there. It just might be a little bit of delay. That's all. Yeah,
good stuff. Hey, do you want to talk about your new boat at all, Kish?
Yeah. So I've just purchased a Quintrex Stealth Hornet 510. I got it from local dealer Trevor Yates out in Bendigo Marine. Trevor was good to deal with. It's been a bit of a process because, you know, there's a few things that we're still working on it on the boat, but yeah, I'm really impressed with it so far. I haven't been able to water test it because of restrictions at the moment, but yeah, it's a really nice boat. Got a 115 Yami on the back. Got an 80 pound Ultrex up the front. We've got a 15-inch Humminbird at the front and a 12-inch on the center console. It's like I try to explain to you, John, it's like a bass boat version, but in aluminium. So for me, it just makes sense in the cod scene that you're comfortable hitting timber, or you might hit a rock on an edge or whatever, and you don't have that fear with fiberglass, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Like, hats off to the guys who zoom around in glass bass boats. But for me, cod lakes and, you know, some of the places that we chase them within lakes, let alone rivers, just aren't a friendly place for fiberglass.
No, they're not. And that's why I feel like this design that Quintrex have done, and there'd probably be 100 other different ones out there that are aluminium, and I think they've hit the nail on the head. It's a really nice looking boat, and it rides well from my experience anyway. So yeah.
Do I get a ride on it?
If you got clean shoes.
that is the richest comment ever.
Nice.
If you ever want your boat messed up, go camping with Kish
Wait.
Bank camping off your boat with Kish.
Wait.
And seriously, the bloke does not know how to clean his boots.
Andy,
JC summed you up one day, Kish, as it's like a hippopotamus got on my deck and rolled everywhere.
But you know what the funny thing is, right? That day when we pulled up, as like we dropped in and it was night, and we pulled up to the bank, and I said, John, that's a muddy bank. And he's looking at it and he goes, you know what? He goes, stuff it. He goes, we're here now. He goes, we'll just make it work. And then I'm like, then he throws me under the bus and we leave and posts the photo. I'm like, have a look at this guy.
There had been 4 inches of rain in 2 days before it as well. Doesn't help.
Just on that trip quickly, how tough was that one, John? Remember that one? Oh, geez, that was a tough couple of days.
Yeah, Ilden's not always friendly.
3 days without a sniff. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And how many times have you come back and the missus has gone, oh, how'd you go? Yeah, no good. And they just can't fathom that you've gone for 2-3 days without a hit. That just doesn't make sense to them, does it?
Yeah, those soul-destroying trips where not a hit, not a follow, not a sign of a fish, they test your resolve with these goddamn green fish and swim baiting, don't they?
Finicky fish, hey.
Yeah, man.
Like like if you think about it, they are some of the most finicky fish I reckon that have to have been on this planet.
Yep.
Would you agree?
There's a lot of fish I haven't targeted, but I think when you speak to people that have chased nearly everything, they definitely give cod a big thumbs up in terms of their degree of difficulty of turning up at a place in a time and producing a fish. I've hosted a few people from international, coming over to catch a cod, and man, the pressure's on. You really feel pressure when someone comes in with that desire to catch a cod, and you've got 5 days or whatever. Great feeling when it comes off, but they're so well. They're predictable in one sense when they'll feed, but they blow that away too often to be considered an easy target on a lure at least. They're a challenge, man. They definitely are a challenge, and I guess add a bit of pressure to that, and you really earn them.
Yep, 100%. And just on the international one, when we look at big thumbs up to like Cal and Josh from Big Bass and Crowley when they brought Oliver over. Like you just take your hat off. They were some amazing results they did for a guy from international standards. Hey.
Yeah, for sure, man. But let's definitely acknowledge the boys from 3630 and their guiding skills.
Yeah.
But they've probably got one of the best swim baiters on the planet that they've got to guide, which is pretty handy also.
Bloody oath. And even yourself with Nate, you guys done well, for him to get one on the fly.
Yeah. Oh, he's a gunfly angler, man. Nate from Hawaii. He's one of those guys that when he shows up, shit happens. It just does.
Well, what happened the first day when we got on the rock?
Yeah.
He just banged one straight
away on fly. It's ridiculous. I think he had one on fly before I had one on stick bait.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like buckling over off the edge of this rock, and we're just sitting there going, how the hell did this happen so quickly?
Well, I'm looking at him with like the line coming back in under the platform we're on, like into a cave, and I'm like, he ain't landing this.
Nah, it was like, it wasn't even vertical. I reckon there was an incline angle past vertical. It was literally like tucked under a rod.
It's an undercut, that rock, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still baffled how that didn't cut.
Yeah, Nate, fly line abrasion.
Yeah, exactly right.
I was going to say, so Kish, we just mentioned the Facebook group Swim Bait Slingers before and how good that community is, and it's so great to see for Australian swim baiting. Where can you see that going, and what do you reckon is going to happen in the future? You think it'll grow like the US groups have, like Swim Bait Underground and all those kind of groups?
Yeah, great question. I think it will, only because like we mentioned before, the sport is growing. So the way I look at that is if the sport is growing, the more interaction you're going to get. So I don't think we're only going to see positive growth in that group. And I know you guys and myself and a few other local boys in the Murray Cod group are in all these American pages as well, all the bass pages. And there's a lot of content that just gets driven through them challenge channels. So even like Swimbait Underground, its own forum, can we see something like that in the future? Maybe. But, I think wherever it is going to end up is only going to be positive, which is good for the sport. And I'm sort of working on something at the moment with that group, just trying to work on a little bit of a project that it's in the works, and it's not to benefit my brand or any brand specifically. It's just literally to benefit the community, which will hopefully drop come December 1st in the next cod season. So bit of a wait, but if you're not a part of that group, jump on it, get involved, because it's only going to help the sport. And when we get involved and drop this new project, I think everyone's going to benefit from it, which is good.
Yeah, nice.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Yes, you are intrigued, and I hope you're intrigued because it's going to be it's going to be a bit of fun, man. It's like I said, it's not benefiting anyone in a sense of financially or anything like that. It's literally benefiting everyone as a community. And you know what? The world's a bit of a crazy time at the moment, so hopefully it makes it a little bit better come that December 1st.
Good call, mate.
Nice.
Yeah, man. Awesome.
Well, Kish, thank you very much for taking an hour or so out of your day and having a chat. I think it was good. We raised a lot and went through a fair bit, and a good bit of motivation in there for a lot of people. Hope all goes well with Bait Religion. Keen to see it keep rolling along and growing as you go. And no doubt we'll have you back on the podcast again sometime in the future, if you can.
Yeah, for sure, boys. I just want to say a big shout out to you guys for getting me on board. It's always good to, have a chat and just talk all things swim baiting and just fishing in general. So I appreciate it. And I'd be keen to get back on here in the future and probably see where Bait Religion's at, and just probably even recap of how far we've come since now. So yeah, awesome.
For sure, man.
Appreciate it, boys.
That's it, man. Just remember we were there at the start.
And if people are looking for Bait Religion on the socials, Insta or website, what's the go? Facebook, where's the best spot to hit?
Instagram is at Bait Religion, so BAITRLGN. So religion, RLGN is obviously short for religion. Website is just www.baitreligion.com, and Facebook is just /Bait Religion. So mainly Instagram is probably the best spot to keep up to date with everything actively. The website has just got everything on there, so we still got a bit of stuff on there. So jump on if you want anything, but there is more stock coming. It's just delays as always. So stay tuned.
Thank you for listening to The Outflow by Ebb Tide Tackle. Subscribe to the podcast to listen to other episodes and stay up to date with new releases. And don't forget to rate and review.